Welcome everyone to the April 13th Kubernetes SIG Node meeting. Just a reminder, the meeting is recorded and hopefully will be uploaded to YouTube for later viewing. Today, I think we wanted to focus primarily on looking ahead towards 122 and beyond and try to get feedback from the broader community on what we want to do with respect to KEP planning. But before we do that, I didn't know if there's Sergey or Alana wanted to give an update on just health metrics for the SIG on what we see happening with creations and mergers coming out of the present lease and into the future.
Yeah, so last week was cherry pick deadline, and Elana was tracking all the PRs that we wanted to cherry pick. We rejected one because it was quite a big refactoring, but a couple others were accepted. So yeah, cherry picks are out, and it was the last patch release for 118. Besides cherry picks and like small PRs, there were not much movement on SIG Node PRs, and I hope that we'll start picking up speed for 122.
Yeah, I spent a bit of time cleaning up the board, and because I had not had much of a chance given, you know, sort of the state of like the 121 freeze. So we're getting there. There was a lot of stuff in the to triage column. We made a lot of progress last week in the SIG Node weekly triage sessions. So I imagine we'll make even more progress this week. And one thing that I should mention, so Sergey mentioned the cherry picks happening last week. I also wrote down a doc in order to sort of ensure that documentation is available going forward in case other people want to pick up that role. So that's in the community repo. And I think Sergey LGTM'd it, but it still needs approval. So.
Well, thank you, Alana and Sergey. I think the last thing I'll comment here is we have to close out our annual report for SIG Node. We had a PR opened earlier in the month, and thank you to those who helped give feedback. I'd like to close on that in the next day or two. So if folks want to provide feedback, I'll put this in the agenda. Please help us do the best we can to accurately reflect our state of the world. So with that in mind, though, I guess, Mernal, do you want, let me give you sharing and you can walk through the rough list of 122 items.
Yep.
So hopefully you have the button now, Mernal.
Yeah, let me try it out. All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we can get started. So the first one on the list here is CRI graduation, and we identified a couple of items here over the past few weeks. So one is potentially a call to return a list of images that kubelet ignores for GC. And the second one, Derek, he proposed adding, if we can see, we can propagate the integer resources to CRI runtimes. So I think both of those sound reasonable, and we can try tackling those next.
Yeah, maybe a couple on those two notes. So we've had a lot of, I think we've had special prominence on like the pause container, depending on your runtime, to have kubelet not garbage collect it, but we've gotten a variety of feedback on others who say that as a part of their image for an operating system host, like there's some other pre-installed images that they would also like to alert the kubelet to ignore. So probably a good call of action as we evolve this is to like get more understanding on those use cases, I guess. And then the integer resources to CRI, This is more like we've had a feature in Kubernetes to support opaque counted resources, but those resources weren't always propagated down to the runtime to act upon, and may have been, in some cases, available to device plugins, but not universally. So just trying to ensure that we have a uniform view of resource requirements rather than a partial view it the whole way down, I think is the spirit of that one.
Yeah. And we also want to, like, I know like there were some CI issues around some container D jobs and cryo jobs, but I think now we should be in a position to switch the kubelet to use the new V1 instead of V1 alpha 1 in 122. So we get one step closer to beta. So the next one is node graceful shutdown. So that was just declared beta in 121. So we received feedback from Clayton on this one, where we want to see if we can have this, like, introduce a way for it to be more flexible and not tied to like priority class names, but rather to values. So David Porter and I had a few ideas on this one. So we'll propose the changes as additions to the KEP and see what folks think and try to evolve it further. And we'll continue to be in beta.
And then maybe Renal, as you go through these items, I know we have 30 folks on the call. Just could you maybe give a one-line summary of what each item is, who may have not been tracking the past work?
Yeah, sure. So node graceful shutdown is a feature we added to the kubelet. So when you reboot the node, kubelet detects using dbus from systemd that we are rebooting the node, and then it uses a systemd inhibitor lock to actually go and stop all the pods gracefully. So today, like, without that feature, like systemd doesn't understand pre-stop hooks or any of the Kubernetes concepts, right? So with this feature in place, after you do a drain, anything that remains will be like gracefully shut down on reboot. So our reboot and shutdown story is getting better. And like for the first iteration, we just added like 2 classes, like regular pods and critical pods. But now we want to evaluate adding more classes or values over there, so we can have like more of a shutdown order rather than the big 2 buckets we have today.
And then the last item, maybe just to understand interest, is I think the names you have listed in the 4th column to the right are just kind of tentative or maybe continuous. Please don't hesitate to reach out or speak up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if you want to help out with testing or like make additions or suggestions, please like add your name. I'm happy to have any help. So the next one on the list is C groups V2. So the current status is like kubelet and the container runtimes convert the V1 values into V2 values. So there are no C group specific V2 specific knobs that are exposed. So as part of that first KEP, we just want to get like feature parity. And so I think we should target alpha. And for that, there are a couple of items. One is like there are, like as we work through this, we discovered that some metrics and stuff wasn't working. And there are some fixes going into runc and lib container for the next RC94, which will help fix those metrics. And that will in turn help fix the breaking remaining tests. So we want to get C groups V2 specific job running on all PRs. And the final thing to call out here is making sure that C group, like CPU manager and anything else that also depends on C groups V2, it works as expected, or we fix it if needed, like anything in the resource management area. So any thoughts or concerns?
Yeah, and then probably just a reminder that we have to maintain parity on V1 and V2 for foreseeable future. But
Yeah.
I had something to call out, which was we don't have an approver assigned to this one.
Ooh.
So the previous cap I had that Giuseppe had put up, I think it was Yuju and myself that have reviewed it. I'm not aware of any. I'm happy to continue to review the cap enhancement given that past history, but don't know if Giuseppe's got the primary pen on this or not. So
like Giuseppe is working on the runC fixes right now, Derek, and he's working his way up the stack. So he is on it, and like David Porter has also offered to help out with testing and adding jobs and so on.
okay.
So David, like if you
yeah, sure, I can help review.
Yeah.
Or
and yeah, we'll need your help like getting in fixes into C Advisor in a timely
Yeah,
manner.
for sure.
So
for
yeah.
sure.
Okay. Thanks, David.
All right, David, I'll add you as well if you don't mind, and then we can figure out how.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So the next one is the memory QoS for cgroups v2 by Tim Su. I think so. It's a new cap that goes one step further. Like first step is cgroups v2 parity, and the next step is like how we can take advantage of the new features added to cgroups v2. And one area is like memory. So there are new knobs like memory min, memory low, high, and max. So in v1 we just had the limit. So like the cap is discussing how we can take advantage of those knobs. So I think there's still some back and forth going on that cap. So if we agree to something there, is there any objection to targeting an alpha there? Because like the risk there is that we may pick something for now, but later on, depending on testing, we may change it. And that should be okay for alpha, right?
Yeah, so I haven't kept up with the latest conversation since I've commented on his cap, but I know personally, Renal, you and I are interested in this because we think there's a lot of benefits for avoiding OOM in the long run. I guess what isn't called out in the cap, and maybe this set of folks on this call could help shepherd a little bit, is a good set of representative test workloads that maybe today don't operate as well as would be desired in a cgroups v1 with traditional memory settings that we could maybe validate against. I don't know if any of our friends from Intel who had helped on some profiling in the past have particular workloads in mind on their own experience that could help. But for everyone on the call, I think please help us identify workloads that these knobs could help preserve.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. At least, Derek, I know at least we have 2-3 workloads that we can contribute there.
Yeah, so I know at Red Hat we have our experience with this. I'm just trying to think of the broader community.
All right. So I guess we can like chime in with the workloads over there and then agree on a rough first design and take it to the next step. Okay. All right. So the next one is user namespaces. So I see Michael Toffin on the call. So I know like originally Kinvoke folks had a proposal, and then Michael and Tim Hawkins chimed in with their suggestions on how we can partition the UID and the GID space. And I admit I have to catch up on it again, but happy to do that. So Michael, do you feel we have a solid enough proposal from you on the cap?
So yeah, I feel like we've made a lot of suggestions in the comments. I don't think the cap has been updated to reflect that. I'm not 100% sure of the current status, but I don't think it has been updated. I know Matt Brinkley from Google was also looking at it, but I think the last time I talked to him, he kind of mentioned that the original author had said like, yeah, I don't really have time right now to work on it. So I'm not sure if it's something that's going to be worked on in the next couple months.
Okay. All right. I mean, is that something you have the bandwidth to pick up, or we'll just kind of defer on it for now?
Yeah, I don't, at least this quarter.
Okay.
So I just, I'm still interested in it. Like, I think some other folks at Google are still interested in it. So we're seeing if we can find an owner, but I don't know if it'll be prioritized.
Yeah, I mean, so we are interested in it as well, but I think we are in a similar status. Derek, what are your thoughts? I don't know, like, if we can.
So this has always been a really hard problem, and we've taken many bites at this apple. I think if the original KEP author isn't available and there's someone else who wants to help push this forward, I think we're probably at a better spot in our thoughts towards it than maybe we were in prior experiences. But yeah, maybe we can just confirm with Maurizio.
Yeah, I can.
The other thought is on this one, we should probably reach out to SIG Storage to see if there's anyone there in that community that's interested in pursuing this, because where past efforts fell down on this was largely around the intersection of user namespace mapping and storage code. And so this will require like more than this will require some
probably some interesting PSP next intersection as well.
Yeah, like if you look at the old PRs that I think Jordan and we almost had a version of this that went to alpha, but like really managing of PVs was the part that we always got hung up on. But yeah, I just think let's call this one out and see maybe anyone SIG Storage is wanting to tackle this.
Yeah, I'm curious there's a note in here on like make sure we get agreement before CRI beta. What's the requirement there?
So we want to move CRI to beta, and ideally, like if we need any CRI changes for user namespaces, if we can get those nailed down, then we can make it a part of the CRI beta. Yeah.
Is there any way to like, would CRI only have a beta API at that point? Would there be any way to have like still not? Because I'm not confident even if we made like whatever the current CRI changes that are proposed in that KEP are, they'd be right, and we'd have to take some time to like work it out.
So, Michael, at the CRI level, do you expect like if we have the ranges, do you expect that to be flexible enough to handle any design we come up with eventually?
It might be. I have to think about it. Yeah.
So that's one area though that caused hangups in the past, because earlier times that we tried to explore this, we assumed that the runtime was consistently configured with a common global remapping. I forget, Mernal,
so I think
now asserting that the kubelet will tell the mapping, and maybe that will simplify things here, but I guess.
Yeah, so there was like some few options where we said like runtime can pick, but then it will have to inform the kubelet. So one additional hop back and forth. I guess we haven't really nailed that down.
Yeah, and I would guess that if you could just pass in the pod to host mapping to the runtime, like it would be fine. But it's been a little while since I looked at the KEP, so. I wouldn't say that.
We may also need a reverse direction API, right? Like if we let the runtime choose it, then we want the kubelet to be able to return it as part of the pod status, I guess. Yeah, pod sandbox.
I guess it depends on how prescriptive we want to be.
And another thing of note here is like kernel 5.11 landed some patches that'll help with the choning issues. So which is a good sign, like which was a big blocker, which made us think, oh, we have to do like a single mapping for the cluster or the node. But kernel is making progress.
Was that on like decoupling user namespaces from like storage mappings, or?
For the root FS, so kind of you don't have to do the chone for each one. You can potentially have to avoid the duplication, right? But I mean that just got merged in 5.11, and then we discovered that it has issues with SE Linux. We expect that to be fixed in 5.13, but it's enough to like experiment on like non-SE Linux distros.
Got it.
Well, it seems like no matter what, we probably want to capture those learnings on
Yeah.
the CAP. You have
Yeah.
more insight here than I did at the time, so I think that
Yeah,
is.
if you can link that patch on the CAP too, though, just in the
Sure.
comments.
Yeah,
it's
I'll
good
add
to
a
have a
comment
note.
there.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. So the next one is the liveness probes timeout. Ilana, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, there's just a couple of updates from alpha that I need to make for beta, and then it's just a matter of like flipping the feature flag. There is actually something that this sort of brought up, which is that in general, liveness termination liveness grace period seconds, I don't know, whatever it's called. Right now, it's allowed to be a negative value. Like it's not currently rejected and validated. So there is a larger problem that's sort of related to this. So Derek had suggested that we fix this for beta and also take care of like the pod level one as well. I think that that is a good idea. I have been working on the CAP update. I just got I got everything updated, but then I didn't have a chance to fill out all the PRR stuff. So that's on track. Should be good for beta this release.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So the next one is ephemeral containers. I know it kind of slipped in 121. So we are hoping if it gets enough attention early enough, we can target beta in 122. Okay.
Do we have Verb on the call? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think Dawn isn't, and I will have to check offline. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So next one, swap. Ilana has a cap. Please review.
Yes.
What alpha?
It's up. It doesn't have specific implementation details yet because I wanted to make sure that everybody likes the high level before I actually go in and write how we'll do the implementation. So, but mostly should be there. So please take a look. I also have it on the agenda to remind people, and there's a link.
Awesome. Thanks. So the next one is SecComp by default. So Sasha has a draft up, and I need to review it, and then once it's ready, we'll post it for we'll propose it for review on SIG Node, and see if we can take it forward. So SecComp by default is basically like today SecComp is not enabled by default, and we are proposing that we have some way to enable SecComp by default. So we have that extra layer of protection by default in a Kubernetes cluster, which will be great from a security perspective. So memory manager is the next one. On the CAP, it's targeted for 122 for beta. So we listed here, but I don't have any insight on what the next steps are. I'm not sure if Artyom or Derek,
Yeah, sure. Hi, folks. So in general, from my perspective, to graduate it to the beta, we have to fix some issues. Like the first issue is init containers. I already prepared pull request, how to handle init containers and reuse the memory that allocated for the init containers. I will add it under the document. The additional issue that Derek requested, it was provide some memory manager metrics. Probably I want to provide it under the pod resources API. Okay. So I have some additional questions regarding to it, and I added it under today's agenda, so we can discuss it later. Okay. I just don't want currently to catch all the time.
Artyom, this is a good time to maybe give awareness of the work. So do you want to just summarize what Memory Manager is doing in case there's folks on the call who want to engage?
Sure. So the Memory Manager is the new the new manager under the kubelet that provide you the possibility to pin your container memory to the specific NUMA node. It also works for Hug pages, currently only for sizes of 1 gigabyte and 2 megabytes Hug pages. And in general, it can guarantee you that your memory will stay under the expected NUMA node. Like anyway, the schedule under the kernel trying to provide your like best effort, but it still will not guarantee you that your workload will always run, always allocate the memory from the same NUMA node. But the memory manager feature can guarantee it. I believe it's in short. If someone want to know more, he can ping me under the Slack, and I will start to write some blog and we'll publish it under the Kubernetes. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, and I don't know if Kevin's on the call today, but I think I assume Artyom, you're working with Kevin Clues from NVIDIA on like getting the PRs reviewed that you needed, or
Yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to annoy him too much, but yeah, I'm ping him
I
pretty
just want to
often.
make sure that that was we're not getting delayed. So thanks, Artyom.
Thanks.
All right, awesome. So the next one is pod overhead. Sergey, I think it's for some reason it slipped in 121, right? Do you have an update for?
Yeah, pod overhead is just to give a context, is a way to tell how much overhead runtime class will introduce and how much more memory you need to allocate for Kubernetes needs to allocate for pods. This release, we fixed a big issue with pod overhead. It wasn't accounted in some allocations. So, I mean, graduation to GA, it was in beta for a very long time. I've been asking around who is using it, and I didn't find many people using it in production. So I think one of the graduation criteria for GA would be to find like real use and make sure that it's satisfying all the needs. And the fact that we found this critical bug just this release may indicate that nobody actually using it very extensively. So yeah, if you're using it, please reach out to me, and I will start a document pinging people.
Yep.
Okay, like in the interest of transparent, like one of the bugs I saw that we had was that it wasn't accounting overhead and resource quota properly. I don't know if you had another bug in your memory.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
But I guess just to relate what this feature did was if folks are exploring other sandboxing solutions when they're in their runtime, like I can appreciate that maybe folks are, I know Google had gvisor, and then there's Kata and others in the community. Like Renal, like
yeah, we have a Kata one. Yeah,
so any feedback here now with respect to Kata?
Yeah, so I'll get the data. Like we definitely configure it and use it. So I'll get the information on that.
Yeah, for gvisor, it's considered, and I think it was like tested, but it was never enabled on a mass scale in production. So I will keep pushing with the team and check with them.
Okay. If we didn't delay promoting this to GA, I guess there's not really a loss either, right? Or is there a clock that I might be missing that we need to remember here?
I can check what the policy is and how long what overhead is in beta. Let me do that by next time.
All right. So Derek, you want to be the approver on that one, or I'm not sure. I can help here if needed as well.
Yeah, I had worked on the original CUP with Tim Alclair, and so I don't know if he wants to be available here as well, but I'm happy to.
Okay, and I think Eric Ernst might also be familiar. I'm not sure if he's.
Yeah. If you could keep Tim Snare there,
sure.
Maybe I'll reach out and see if he has cycles as well.
Okay. So the next one is Windows privilege containers. Is Mark on the call?
Yeah, we're hoping to get the implementation PR merged pretty early in 122. This got delayed just because of some late reviews coming in and not able to get consensus in time. So hopefully we're still targeting alpha for 122.
Okay, awesome. So the next one is kubelet credential providers. I think this also slipped through in 121. Andrew, are you on the call? Okay, we can check.
I do have a quick question on that, which is if anybody, I know it wasn't in the original cap, but if anybody is looking at adding support for like that, passing bound tokens into the credential providers.
Can you elaborate on that, Michael?
So like if you, like today you can mount a projected token on a pod, right? So you get like an auto-rotated token for the service account associated with that pod, and you can, because those are all like OIDC compatible JOTs, you can federate those identities into third parties outside the cluster. So there could be some advantage to, I mean, I want it eventually to being able to do image pulls with the identity that's bound to the pod, and usually you have to exchange the token that Kubernetes generates for a token from whatever provider is hosting the image in order to authenticate for the image pull. So making it possible to pass the like bound token for the pod into the request to the credential provider for the image pull credential would, open that possibility up.
I think it's a really interesting use case. For this particular one, my memory on this is that we had grew a feature in a kubelet that we'd kind of forgotten that then got coupled to the externalizing of cloud providers, where the KEP here that Andrew had and I tried to help with was delegating to a secondary source to allow you to figure out credentials when pulling from particular registries, whether it's GCIRO or that type of thing. The issue of tying the image pool to the pod identity, though, is maybe a good thing that we can talk in the future. I know, Mernal, you and I have heard users who say they want to be able to, even when doing things like with Kata, they want to be able to pull the image in a different step of the workflow. And I'm wondering, Michael, if the scenario you're describing is like, today when you pull an image, it's completely disconnected from the pod it's associated to in the kubelets view of the cache, and maybe we should start thinking about like a pod overlay type view on the image cache, and then that would let folks like Kata runtimes pull inside their sandbox maybe slightly differently, or tie things to identity we talked about. So
interesting.
And so if others have had similar,
interesting. Yeah.
If others have had similar requests, I think this is actually a rich space to explore. But
I think for us it's more like we've had customers ask like if they could like scope it to the service account on the pod, or like today they're exporting a long lived key from like GCP IAM and sticking that in an image pull secret, and they don't want to do that anymore. So that's kind of where we're coming from.
So I think like the Intel's like confidential computing presentations recently like captured those use cases, Michael, if you want to catch up on that. So maybe like exploring a common document for requirements, like tying image pulls to pods and capturing these use cases there.
Yeah, but at minimum, it's different than what this row I think was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right. So the next one is Node Service Log Viewer.
I can talk to that one as well.
Sure.
So this is a feature that will allow users to use kubectl to get service logs from both Linux and Windows nodes. And this one there was a KEP opened in 121. Then there's still some open questions about usability on the KEP that we're still trying to resolve. So still hopefully targeting alpha for this, but it's work in progress.
Okay. Right. So the next one is Docker shim removal. I think the target is 124. So I guess meanwhile, just keeping the communication on. Dims, Sergey, anything to add there?
No, I think, one of the problem is monitoring agents and security agents that sometimes lacking support for other runtimes in Docker shim, but we need to keep talking to them.
Okay. All right. So the next one is C advisor less CRI full stats. So Peter and David Porter have been working on a KEP. David, you want to summarize the
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for this one, it's basically we want we kind of have some issues right now because we have the CRI to kind of abstract with container runtime, but C advisor still vendored in, and it has basically logic for each runtime kind of hard coded into it. So we want to kind of move off of that and have the CRI kind of be more responsible for providing metrics. But there's some kind of migration story around current metrics and that type of thing that we need to figure out. So that's kind of what we're trying to target on that KEP.
We need an approver for this one. Is that going to be Derek?
Yeah, so I would love for someone else to help on that, like a.
So Dawn is interested in that one, Derek. So maybe she can.
Okay, so yeah, let's get Dawn.
It's one that I have to openly admit gives me great fear that we're going to miss something. So, but I unfortunately don't have bandwidth. So
yeah, so I'm happy to help review and make sure like so like two guiding principles are don't break any existing metrics, and the second one is don't regress on performance. So
I'll also make sure to pull David Ashpole into this one from the instrumentation side.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so he's been commenting on the KEP, so his inputs are also like valuable.
Yeah, we've also been involved with Mark, who is also in SIG instrumentation. So it would be good to get folks from there as well.
Yep. All right. So the next one is huge page storage, medium size. So Derek, this is also assigned to you. So if you want to farm it out to someone.
I think this one is, I think Ed Bartosh is working on this one. This is one of those perma beta things that we just need to graduate.
Yeah, my memory is poor. And I know there's another item that was, I'm mixing my mind right now around the sizing of TempFS, but yeah, I don't think there's probably any issue on this. It's just beta and move forward. People are using it successfully.
Okay. The next one is deprecating dynamic kubelet config deprecation.
Yeah, so on this one, like I think, Dims, you and I talked a little bit about it, I think, if my memory is right, but I think we just need to make a statement of intent in the space, which might be as simple as just marking it deprecated and then responding.
Yeah, identifying the CI jobs, if at all. I see a lot of references to this in feature flags in some CI jobs.
So I think
I think it's mostly the node end-to-end tests that were using it to turn features on and off in kubelet during tests.
Yeah, so Sergey, I thought you said you were going to help on this.
Yes. I'm going to put my name here.
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks, Sergey.
Awesome.
All right. So the next one is in-place VPA. So is that ready for alpha? Derek, I know you and Dawn approved it last week.
Yeah, so I just, if I had a way to like stack rank priority on this, and maybe we have to do this as a separate exercise, I want to like thank Vinay for his patience in helping us get to a good design on that. And so the good news is that the KEP was merged. I'd really love to progress on this. And so, yeah, I think at this point, it's probably ready to just get the implementation in. I haven't looked at his latest implementation PR, but I'm really happy with how the design turned out.
Yeah, so Derek, on the priority, I think we can add another column and then do the green, yellow, blue thing again next week to see where we are.
Yeah, I just wanted to let Vinay know that I appreciate his enduring persistence in this important area.
Yeah, that's great. And what I will do, so we have this empty to-dos column here as well. And once we're finished reviewing everything, I'll make sure and I'll go and check everything and fill in every to-do for the KEPs so that we know what's left in order to get them moving for next meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Alana. So the next one is new CPU manager policy or enabling external policies for CPU manager. So Francesco
Yes.
has left a comment. Francesco, you're on.
Yeah. This needs a bit of context. So my original intent was to add new CPU manager policies. So I started writing a cap and follow all due process. Then I posted in the mailing list, in the SIG Node mailing list, asking for feedback. There was strong interest in, hey, let's just enable external policies and stop adding built-in policies. So here we have, let's say, a decision to make as a community, like which is the correct way to extend CPU manager in the first place, adding new built-in policies or enabling external policies? Because I was not involved in Kubernetes at the time, but during the conversation, it emerged that originally it was proposed to enable external policies, if I'm not mistaken, from Levente, which should be in the call, I believe. So my takeaway, which determines the way forward, is which is the correct way to extend the CPU manager.
Yeah. So Francesco,
just another just a follow up. If we decide, as it is my impression that my understanding that we want to move forward towards external policy, I can talk with Kevin, which himself proposed, Kevin Clues himself proposed, hey, maybe it's time to reorganize CPU manager as device plugin, and talk with him and maybe decide about this way forward. So really, what I'm looking forward is, sorry, Don.
So I guess just the context set for those that don't have the history, I guess. So originally there were 2 CPU manager policies identified, and we only ever got one written, or I guess really 3. There was the none or default as you have now, and then there was the static one, which was the idea being like, how do we gain trust in our user community for performance-oriented workloads? And then we had talked about a third one called dynamic, which was going to be like, what could the kubelet try to do to make this more autopilot in nature, and like instead of giving a pod a bound CPU set for its life, like potentially like adjust it dynamically based on observed usage and that type of thing. We never really got far on that dynamic desire. I think the one thing I would be curious about is like what the set of potential policies are that people are interested in enumerating, and then understanding how they intersect with things like memory manager or topology manager, and then like looking at it from that perspective. But that's just the history on how we ended up as we are now. But doesn't mean we can't change. There's also arguments for just allowing it to be completely handled outside of the kubelet for all these resources. And so I guess that's all I had on that. But yeah, I guess, I don't know, Francesco, what your particular use case is, but maybe others have ones in mind. And
yeah, just a quick follow-up. For the specific use cases I was targeting, I was exploring, I had an item on the agenda, and I have the presentation and the agenda. Probably will not make today, but I described the use cases there. It's a refinement for the refinement of the static policy. So the reason I'm raising this point is that really deciding how we extend the CPU manager in the first place, which was pretty much most of the discussion in the thread that started, well, pretty much it is needed to understand how to move forward, either moving forward with the cap with the built-in policies or pivot towards enabling the external ones. So really, unfortunately, I don't have a more clear statement with respect to state. So really, I don't know how to move forward past that.
I guess, Francesco, is there a reason why your refinement of the static policy wouldn't just be something we want in a static policy? Maybe that we can follow up on this later, but thanks for the summary. And
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we get more discussion needed here right before, and we can continue that. All right. So next one is allow users to set a pod's hostname to its fully qualified domain name. So that needs to be promoted to GA. Sounds fine to me. I saw the PR and a cap when it was originally introduced, so I don't see a reason not to do it. And the last one is rootless mode. Akihiro, are you on the call?
I added this on behalf of Akihiro. He's
Okay.
been chasing this for a few releases now, and we
Right.
keep bumping him down from the from the list.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, Derek, if you want to summarize our take on this.
One sec. Let me just give you one data point before you go there.
Yeah.
So Kind, Akihiro is working with Kind and trying to get some changes in so Kind can be rootless or something like that. And he has one PR, which is like a short PR that is stuck in KK forever. So that's the background that I know of. Over to you, Derek.
Yeah, so I apologize. Like I admire Akiro's desire to do this work. I think the tension I've had with it was just understanding the usage context, right? It's one thing for Kind to run and then maybe not and make some sacrifices, and that's another thing to say in different production scenarios, right? You'd have to do something different. So I think my recollection was that previous attempts here had disabled all resource management, which is basically like turning off a third of the SIG. And so I had thought that with Secret Suite 2 that actually you could keep resource management on and still be rootless. And so I think we just need to figure out what the intermediate hop points we want to have. But yeah, I guess maybe if I'm wrong, please, please let me know.
Well, the way I think about it, Derek, is like there's nothing wrong in getting something in alpha where you are making assumptions about what will work and what will not work and what needs to be switched off, right? And then going from alpha to beta will be like a bigger bar for especially production scenarios before it can be switched on by default, right?
It may help, I think, if Akihiro can come to the SIG and give a demo of how things are, like show a cluster running, we can ask questions to get like to gauge how things are today, what is the remaining work. And
then I can't remember if K3S was exploring patches in this space either. Like, honestly, I feel like I'm
K3S
okay with...
has one patch, and that patch was picked from KK repository.
Okay, like, yeah, if we can just get up to speed on that, like,
right.
I personally am okay with people innovating downstreams and side streams and that type of thing, so we learn.
Right.
So yeah, I guess.
Mrinal, I think Akihiro gave a demo to SIG runtime in CNCF. I can find and paste the link.
Okay.
And also invite him. He's in, I think he's in Japan, so it's going to be hard for him to make this time, I think.
Yeah.
So if we can ask him some questions
okay.
asynchronously, that'll be better.
Sure, yeah, we can do that. And if there's like more interest in the community to have that kind of a presentation with Akihiro, we can have like a one-off setup.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as a macro community challenge though, Dims, like, I don't know if we're good at this, but
saying no.
I don't want to say saying no. I think of it as like, is it the cat theorem where you can be consistent, available, or whatever? There's almost like, to some degree, we get some of these enhancement requests that are very forward-looking, and they require you to sacrifice some leg in your three-legged stool. And I'm not sure, like, if our responsibility in the SIG is to find a way to ensure we get all the prereqs done so we don't have to do that. And then, like, I'm completely sensitive to like the mental overhead of we carry one patch and then we have to remember it, right?
Yeah,
and
but we've been
that
getting good at like ripping things out, Derek, these days. So I'm happy about that.
I'm being very like open about this, right? Like I think if folks on the SIG want to say like, you know what, actually we have a lot of use cases where this is interesting and I don't care about resource management. Like we should have those dialogues. I'm not sure we always do. And I think kind is a good like intermediate space that's kind of questioning some of our assumptions, but but like my fear is that like someone sees Kubernetes supports rootless and then asks, okay, every 5G deployment in the world needs to do this. And then it actually becomes a barrier to Kubernetes adoption rather than an accelerant, right? Because then you'll be like, what's the next 3 months of things that people need to figure out?
Yeah, I hear
gotta be
you.
careful.
Yep. Thanks, Derek.
Yep. So thanks. So one thing I forgot to add here, but wanted to bring up here is checkpoint restore one. So do we feel like if we have an end-to-end design presented that uses Michael's idea of storing the checkpoints in an image, we can like make progress on the CAP? What do you think, Derek?
I mean, I don't know. I think we should update it and see if there's other folks. I view that as very similar to rootless, right? Like how do we do something unique and allow exploration?
So Derek, I'll give you an example of why this the rootless one might be of interest, right? For example, kubeadm is looking at a rootless kubeadm, but then they'll end up calling things in kubelet, which is going to be root. So between kubeadm going rootless and kind being available in a rootless mode, then you could have like the initial cluster for cluster API. The master cluster, which will then spin off worker clusters, right? So that one could be rootless, right? Because it's not really doing anything other than bringing up the workloads, and it's the bootstrap master cluster basically, right?
Could user namespaces meet the same need though? That's the other way of looking at that, right? You could think you have root in the container and you don't too. Like, does the kubelet itself need to be rootless?
Exactly. So we are going to look at that there and then come back here for sure. But I'm just saying that that is one use case where you're running something on the laptop. You don't really need to run as root and you start an initial cluster. That's not your production cluster. That's just for bootstrapping workloads on an actual worker node, worker cluster. Right?
Yeah.
So
we should evaluate that.
That kind of things might be useful down the line.
Yeah, it's just a rootless kubelet that needs to launch privileged containers. Like it has to be able to deploy a CNI, right? And then it has to be able to probably deploy all the systigs in the world and that type of thing. And so the other thing is like, well, maybe user namespaces is the other thing that we could balance getting attention to because we probably had users asking for each. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I'm completely open, obviously, to exploring the right outcome. So thanks, Dims.
Yeah.
So I think that's end of the list. If there's anything else, folks, you want to bring up for 122?
Now is the time.
And maybe help afterwards figure out how we want to stack rank this. Some are probably, we probably want to stack rank on 2 dimensions like effort, complexity, and I don't know, something else. But I'm kind of wondering like, some of these items are not as simple as the ones we did in the past. So,
Mrinal, I realized that we haven't, we should probably send this to the mailing list too, because not everybody is here. And rootless, I remembered from memory, so I added it here. Otherwise, I don't know what else is missing here, right? So let's just
I'll send it out.
Yeah, Dims, I think we have to go back and even add the one that we had promoted and then had to revert last minute for temp of us.
Yeah, I opened a PR for that already, Derek. So yeah,
thank you. We should just merge it again. Cool. Well, thanks a lot, Mrinal, and I guess we look forward to everyone's feedback. We've got 3 minutes left on today, and I'm not sure we're going to get to the other items, but for the calls out to the caps that were enumerated here, hopefully everyone has some context and we can get together a good plan for 122. All right. Anything else that people want to raise? Otherwise, have a great afternoon and talk to you later.
I know.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.